AITA for confronting my sister about her gift to my kid and causing a huge family rift. So, this is going to be long, and honestly, I'm still trying to process everything that happened. I, 34F, have a 7-year-old son, Max. I've always tried to be really conscious about teaching him values like empathy, gratitude, and responsibility. My sister, Lila, 29F, has a completely different approach to parenting. She has a 5-year-old, Emma. She's always been very, let's say, free-spirited, which is fine, but it sometimes borders on chaotic, especially when it comes to discipline and gifts. She tends to be very generous, but in a very attention-grabbing way. Max's birthday was last week, and I invited the immediate family over to celebrate. I try to keep his birthdays simple. He loves board games, books, and small toys, so that's usually what he gets. I don't do extravagant parties because I don't want him to feel entitled or expect huge things every year. Lila, however, has a tendency to go overboard with gifts. When she arrived, she had a huge bag. I mean, it was massive, and it looked like she could have brought gifts for everyone in the neighborhood. I thought, okay, maybe she just really wants to spoil Max this year. No judgment. But as soon as Max opened the first gift, I realized this was going to be unusual. The first thing she handed him was a brand new, top-of-the-line gaming console. Not just any console, but one that just came out and costs over $600. Max has never even asked for a gaming console, and we don't allow him screen time like that. I was shocked, but I didn't want to embarrass Lila in front of everyone, so I said thank you and set it aside. Then came gift 2, a high-end tablet with a stylus, which she said would help him with schoolwork and drawing. Honestly, it's basically the same as a mid-tier laptop. I thanked her again and tried to keep things moving. By the end of the pile, Max had more toys and electronics than he could even fit in his room. There was a hoverboard, a mini drone, a subscription to a kid's streaming platform, and about 10 other things that were clearly expensive. Here's where it got tense. Lila kept saying things like, I just want him to have the best, and I don't want Max to ever feel like he's missing out. At first, I laughed it off and said, he's 7. He's not going to be able to play with all of this yet. But as I looked at Max's overwhelmed face, I realized that this was more than just generosity. It was excessive. Max is a sensitive kid, and he started crying a little because he didn't know which toy to open first and felt bad about disappointing her somehow. I decided I had to say something. I pulled Lila aside and calmly explained that while I appreciated her thoughtfulness, I didn't think it was appropriate to give Max such expensive gifts, and it was putting him in an awkward position. I said I'd prefer she check with me before buying things like this in the future. I also mentioned that I want to teach Max to value the things he has and not expect extreme gifts. Lila immediately got defensive. She started raising her voice, saying, "You're ruining his birthday. You're jealous. I'm just trying to show him love. Don't tell me how to parent him." I try to stay calm and explain that this isn't about jealousy or control. It's about what I think is healthy for Max. She stormed out of the house with Emma and refused to speak to me for the rest of the day. The problem didn't end there. My parents were upset with me because they think I overreacted. They said Lila was just trying to be generous and accused me of embarrassing her in front of everyone. Max, meanwhile, was confused and sad because he doesn't understand why his aunt is angry or why I was upset. The next day, I tried to explain things to Max in a gentle way, emphasizing that it's okay to appreciate gifts, but also important to understand limits and gratitude. Max said he liked the gifts, but felt bad about making Lila upset. I told him that it's okay, and that it's more important to be honest about what's healthy for him. I haven't spoken to Lila since. She's been texting my parents and sending passive-aggressive messages about how I ruined everything and stole the joy from Max. My parents are split. My dad thinks I was right, but my mom thinks I was too harsh. My husband is on my side, but I feel awful because I didn't want to create a rift in the family, especially on Max's birthday. So now I'm stuck. Lila has essentially cut off communication with me. My parents are divided, and Max is caught in the middle. I keep wondering if I really did overreact. I feel like I was just trying to protect Max and teach him about gratitude and moderation, but everyone is treating me like I'm the villain. So, Reddit, AITA for confronting my sister about her extravagant gifts to my kid and causing a huge family conflict? Or was I justified in trying to set boundaries for Max's sake? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep creating more great content. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks so much for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what she did to my fiancé. So this is going to be long, but I need to get it all out. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Lily, 24F, and we've had a complicated relationship for most of our lives. We were close as kids, but as we got older, our personalities clashed a lot. Lily has always been dramatic, controlling, and prone to making things about her. I've learned to tolerate it and usually just keep my distance, especially since I've been in a stable relationship with my fiancé, Mark, 30M, for the past 4 years. The problem started about 6 months ago when Lily got engaged. I was excited for her at first, and I offered to help with wedding planning in whatever way she needed. She was enthusiastic about my input, and I thought we were on the same page. But it quickly became clear that she wanted control over everything and didn't actually want me involved beyond being a guest who didn't make waves. I tried to respect her boundaries, but it was frustrating because she would ask for my opinion and then completely ignore it or mock it in front of her friends. Fast forward to 2 months ago, Lily invited Mark and me to a wedding planning weekend at her parents' house. The invitation sounded harmless enough. She wanted help picking decorations and finalizing seating arrangements. I assumed it would be like a casual, fun gathering. From the moment we arrived, things started to feel off. Lily had her bridesmaids and several of her friends there, and it quickly became clear that she was more interested in turning this into a mini bachelorette party for herself rather than actually listening to anyone's input. Mark mostly stayed quiet, which is his nature, but I could tell he was uncomfortable. The real incident happened on the second night. Lily decided it would be hilarious to give wedding advice to everyone, but she specifically targeted Mark. She made a big show of testing him on how well he knew me, asking super personal questions in front of her friends, and laughing every time he hesitated or got something wrong. The questions were bizarrely intimate, like asking what my favorite sexual position was, which I had never told anyone, and details about our finances. I was mortified. Mark tried to laugh it off, but he was clearly embarrassed. When I confronted Lily privately later that night, she said I was overreacting and that it was just a joke. I told her it wasn't funny and that it crossed a line. She shrugged and said I was being too sensitive. The next morning, she sent a group chat message to everyone at the house, essentially saying Mark was so clueless and that she had to teach him how to be a good husband. I was furious, but I tried to stay calm because I didn't want to make a scene in front of everyone. I left the weekend early, telling Lily that Mark and I had to go back home because of work commitments. She acted like nothing had happened and seemed annoyed that we left. Mark and I talked about it on the way home, and he said he felt humiliated and didn't want to be around Lily for the rest of the wedding planning. After that weekend, I decided I wouldn't attend her wedding unless something changed. I sent Lily a message explaining why. I couldn't be around her if she was going to publicly embarrass my fiancé. I told her it wasn't negotiable, that I loved her but couldn't compromise my relationship or my own dignity. Her response was aggressive. She called me selfish, dramatic, and said I was trying to ruin her special day. She even suggested that Mark and I were being manipulative to make her feel guilty. I tried to compromise, suggesting we have a private conversation before the wedding to set boundaries and expectations. She refused, saying she didn't want me lecturing her on how to treat people during her wedding. She also started posting about our fallout on social media, framing me as the unreasonable sibling who was threatening to ruin a wedding over nothing. Now the wedding is in 3 weeks. Mark and I haven't spoken to Lily in person, and I've made it clear that we will not attend unless she apologizes and agrees to respect basic boundaries. She hasn't responded except to escalate her posts online. My parents are frustrated with me, saying that I should put aside my pride for Lily's big day. My friends are supportive of me, saying I did nothing wrong, but I feel torn because I don't want a family rift, yet I also can't allow Mark to be treated that way. I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm making it all about myself and Mark, and maybe Lily's wedding is a big deal, but the way she humiliated him felt intentional and cruel. I honestly don't see how attending could go well without another conflict, and I don't want to put myself or Mark through that. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she embarrassed my fiancé in front of her friends and refused to acknowledge it. AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she gave away my childhood dog without asking. This is going to be long, so bear with me. I, 28F, have a younger sister, 24F, named Emily. Growing up, Emily and I were close, but had the typical sibling dynamics. Lots of teasing, occasional fights, but nothing overly dramatic. One thing that always stood out in our family was our dog, Max. He was a golden retriever we got when I was 10 and Emily was 6. Max was my constant companion. I taught him tricks, walked him every day, and we had a very strong bond. When Emily was younger, she loved Max too, but I always considered him my dog in the sense that I spent the most time with him, trained him, and cared for him. Fast forward to a few years ago. Emily moved out to live with her boyfriend in another city, and life got busier. Max stayed with me at our family home because I was still living there while finishing graduate school. Max was getting older, around 14, and I had started noticing health problems typical for a senior dog. Arthritis, some hearing loss, and general fatigue. I made a point to ensure Max had the best care possible, regular vet checkups, special food, and a routine that suited him. Here's where things started to go sideways. A few months ago, Emily called me out of the blue, sounding excited. She had recently gotten a promotion and wanted to share some joy in her life by adopting a dog. I was happy for her, told her to pick one she could commit to, and we joked about how she could never replace Max. Nothing seemed off at the time. Then 2 weeks later, I got a frantic text from Emily. She said she had a surprise for me and was coming over that evening. I thought maybe she was visiting and bringing a small gift, nothing alarming. But when she arrived, she had Max with her, alive and wagging his tail, looking confused and anxious. My heart dropped immediately because I had not agreed to him leaving my house. Before I could ask what was going on, she said, "I know Max is old, and you're busy, so I figured he'd be happier with me. I took care of all the paperwork with Mom's help. Isn't it amazing? He's going to live with me now." I froze. I tried to process what she was saying. Max was my dog. I had raised him, cared for him through thick and thin, including a surgery for a torn ligament 2 years ago. She had literally taken him without consulting me. I felt a mix of betrayal, anger, and heartbreak. Max immediately seemed disoriented, sniffing around, clearly confused about why he was suddenly in a new environment with people he didn't recognize as his primary caregiver. I confronted Emily right then. I told her she had no right to take my dog. She got defensive and said she had always loved Max and that I had become too busy and stressed to give him the attention he needed. She also said that Mom had supported her decision and implied I was selfish for holding onto a dog for my own sake. I was shocked. Not only had she acted without my permission, but she also tried to make me feel guilty for caring for Max the way I had been. I called Mom afterward to get her perspective. Mom admitted she had helped Emily with the paperwork, but she insisted she thought I would be okay with it because I had so many responsibilities and Max might be happier elsewhere. I was furious. Happiness is not a reason to steal someone's pet. I told Mom I felt completely disrespected and betrayed by both of them, and she brushed it off, saying I was overreacting. Since then, Emily has been sending me updates about Max, photos, videos, and stories of his new life. She even started calling him her dog publicly on social media. Every time I see a photo, I feel this mix of sadness and anger that's hard to describe. I tried to talk to her calmly a couple of times, saying Max needs stability at his age and that I had raised him, but she either ignores me or says, "Don't be dramatic, he's fine." I haven't seen Max in months because I refuse to be around Emily. I even considered legal action, but I'm unsure how strong my case is since Emily technically completed the paperwork and Mom was involved. The rest of my family is split. My dad says I should forgive Emily because she loves Max too, and maybe it's for the best, but I feel like that's missing the point entirely. My friends mostly side with me, saying what she did was borderline theft and emotionally manipulative. I feel like I lost something irreplaceable, not just a pet, but my trust in my sister. I keep replaying the moment she showed up with Max in the car, and it still makes me sick to my stomach. I haven't spoken to Emily in months, and I don't think I can forgive her, at least not without her acknowledging what she did and apologizing sincerely, which she hasn't. I feel like no one in my family truly understands why I'm so hurt. I'm constantly anxious about what she might do next, and I've considered moving to prevent her from pulling something like this again, but that's extreme. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she gave away my dog without asking? Or am I overreacting and being stubborn over a pet? I just can't shake the feeling that what she did was fundamentally wrong and a betrayal I don't know if I can get past. I'm including this here because I need an honest take, even if it's harsh. I feel like my feelings are justified, but I want to understand if maybe I'm missing some perspective. AITA for refusing to let my cousin's wedding ruin my honeymoon? So I, 29F, have been with my husband, Dan, 31M, for 7 years, and we finally got married last month. Our wedding was small, mostly family and close friends, and we decided to keep it intimate because both of us had stressful jobs and didn't want a huge production. From the start, I knew my cousin, Laura, 27F, could be a bit dramatic, but I never expected the level of chaos she would bring. Laura and I have always had a tense relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child in the family. Perfect grades, perfect boyfriend, perfect everything. I was always a little overlooked, and while I thought we had matured past some of that, apparently not. A couple of months before my wedding, Laura got engaged. That's when things started to get tricky. She immediately announced that she wanted her wedding to be the event of the year and that she expected all family to attend, naturally. I was supportive, told her congratulations, and tried to keep things light. Fast forward to 2 weeks before our wedding. Dan and I were about to leave for our honeymoon, a 10-day trip to Japan, which we had been planning for over a year. That's when Laura called my mom. My mom later told me that Laura was upset that my wedding and her wedding were so close. Hers was only 3 months after mine, and she felt like everyone would be tired of celebrating and that her wedding would be overshadowed. My mom assured her that we didn't want to overshadow anything and that both weddings were special. Laura apparently didn't take that well. The next day, she texted me directly, saying, "I really hope you don't mind, but I might need some advice from you before my big day. Also, it would mean a lot if you postponed your honeymoon, so we could talk in person about some ideas." I was stunned. I replied politely that our honeymoon dates were non-negotiable and that I could give advice over the phone or via email. The tone of the messages changed immediately after that. Laura started sending passive-aggressive texts like, "It must be nice to relax while I'm stress planning my wedding," and "I guess some of us have fewer responsibilities than others." I ignored them mostly, focusing on packing and finalizing details for my honeymoon. I did respond to a few questions about vendors she asked about, but I kept it brief. Then, the day before we were set to leave, my mom calls me in a panic. Laura has apparently been calling her repeatedly, crying, and saying that I was being selfish and inconsiderate for leaving her to plan her wedding alone. My mom begged me to reach out and smooth things over. I reluctantly texted Laura, offering a short phone call. She agreed, and during the call, she immediately launched into a lecture about how she felt abandoned and unsupported. I tried to stay calm and said that while I wanted to help, my honeymoon is planned and non-refundable, and I couldn't change our plans. I suggested she talk to my aunt, uncle, or mom for help instead. She got upset and hung up on me. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. While we were on our honeymoon, I started receiving messages from other relatives, all basically saying, "Laura is very upset that you won't help her with her wedding in person," or "she feels like you don't care about her big day." Some messages were guilt-trippy, like, "You're our family. She really needs you right now." I didn't respond. I tried to enjoy Japan and ignore the drama, but it started to weigh on me. When we returned, the first thing that happened was Laura texting me again. This time, she said she was hurt that I hadn't flown back halfway through my honeymoon to help her pick out flowers and dresses. She also mentioned that she had told other family members that I was being extremely selfish and that she didn't think she could count on me for anything in the future. At that point, I finally responded in a slightly firmer tone. I said that my wedding and honeymoon were major milestones for me and Dan, and that I had already spent months planning and paying for our trip. I explained that while I wished her the best, I could not compromise my plans or finances to intervene in her wedding preparations. She replied with a message saying, "I can't believe you care so little about family. I guess I'll have to manage everything myself, even if it means crying alone in my dress." My family has now divided into factions. Some say I'm right and that she is being unreasonable, while others have accused me of putting a trivial vacation over supporting family. I feel like I'm being punished for setting boundaries and trying to enjoy a significant life event, but I also feel guilty that she's upset. I've considered offering more help remotely, like video calls, but I really don't want to compromise my honeymoon. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my cousin's wedding planning interfere with my honeymoon, even though she claims she needs me there? AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband come to our wedding after he disrespected my family? I, 29F, am getting married next spring, and my fiancé, 30M, and I've been planning a relatively small wedding, mostly close friends and family. The planning process has been going relatively smoothly, but a situation with my sister, 32F, and her husband, 35M, has become a major point of stress, and now my fiancé is asking me if I'm overreacting. A little context, my sister and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was often critical of me, and while we've gotten closer as adults, there have been consistent moments where she's crossed boundaries. For example, she's prone to making passive-aggressive comments about my choices, including my career, relationships, and even the way I decorate my apartment. I try to shrug it off because I do genuinely care about her, but it has always left a mark. Her husband, who she's been with for about 6 years, has never gotten along with my parents or with me personally. I've tried to be polite, but he has a history of making offhand, insulting remarks at family gatherings. Some examples. At a Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago, he loudly criticized my mother's cooking in front of everyone, saying she didn't even know how to boil water properly and that the whole meal was mediocre. At another occasion, he criticized the way my fiancé and I were raising our pets, saying that anyone who spoils their dogs like that is just encouraging bad behavior. These might seem like small incidents, but they are consistent and often come across as intentionally disrespectful. My parents have asked me privately why they should continue inviting him if he consistently insults the people who care about him. Now, the most recent incident happened about 2 months ago. My sister and her husband came to my engagement party, which I try to keep low-key. While everyone else was mingling, he started making comments about my wedding plans, loudly questioning why we were spending money on a photographer and saying that anyone who pays for fancy things is just trying to show off. When my fiancé politely told him that we were doing what we wanted, he laughed and said, "Yeah, good luck with that. You two will probably regret wasting so much money." It embarrassed me in front of my friends and family. I didn't respond at the time because I didn't want to start a confrontation, but I left early and my parents later expressed that they felt uncomfortable as well. After that, I spoke to my sister privately about her husband's behavior. I told her that I love her and want her at my wedding, but that I couldn't have her husband there if he continued to disrespect our family. She got defensive, saying that he's her husband and that it's unfair to punish him for one bad interaction. I tried to explain that this wasn't about one incident. It was a pattern, but she refused to acknowledge it. She accused me of trying to control her personal life and said that if he isn't invited, she won't come either. This is where the situation gets even messier. I'm very close with my parents, who are in their late 60s, and my mom told me that she and my dad would feel awkward and unwelcome if he were there, especially given his previous comments about them and the way he has treated them at family gatherings. My fiancé supports me, but he's worried about the fallout if my sister doesn't come. He said, maybe we could just invite him and hope he behaves. You can't control someone else's behavior entirely. But I feel like this isn't just about control. It's about creating a safe and respectful environment for everyone at the wedding, which is a once-in-a-lifetime event for me. I asked my sister to confirm whether she would attend without her husband. She initially said yes, but later texted me that she feels hurt and angry and that our family is overreacting. She even suggested that I'm being unreasonable and that I should just suck it up for one day. She also mentioned that she might not attend at all if he isn't invited, and that if I go through with excluding him, our relationship might be permanently damaged. Since then, I've been feeling extremely torn. Part of me thinks I'm justified because of his repeated disrespect and the stress it would cause for me and my parents. Another part of me feels guilty for potentially causing a rift with my sister. My fiancé is supportive of me, but he's also stressed about the possibility of family drama. We're trying to plan the wedding and keep things as joyful as possible, but this conflict is hanging over everything. I've also received mixed advice from friends. Some say I'm right to protect my wedding space and my family from someone who's toxic. Others say that weddings are about compromise and that maybe I should try to find a way to invite him or at least speak to him one-on-one before making a final decision. I've thought about this, but I don't see how a one-off conversation will magically fix years of behavior that's been repeatedly insulting. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband come to my wedding after he repeatedly disrespected my family, even though it might mean my sister won't attend. I want to have my special day surrounded by people who are respectful and supportive, but I also don't want to completely ruin my relationship with my sister. I just don't know if this boundary is reasonable or if I'm overreacting. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend live in my house after he lost his job. I, 29F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emma, 25F, but our relationship has gotten a bit strained recently. A little context. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment that I bought 2 years ago. I live alone, and financially I'm comfortable, though I work hard for it. My sister has always been a bit more free-spirited, less financially stable, and more impulsive, which has caused tension between us over the years. Emma started dating Mark about a year ago. At first, I liked him. He seemed charming and funny, and I genuinely hoped he was good for her. Over time, however, I began noticing some red flags. He tends to avoid responsibility, complains about every little inconvenience, and, frankly, has a sense of entitlement that rubbed me the wrong way. Emma, being her usual cheerful self, tends to overlook these things. A couple of months ago, Mark lost his job. According to Emma, it was a soul-crushing corporate betrayal, and while I sympathized, I also noticed that he had been slacking off at work for months. He asked Emma if he could stay in my apartment temporarily until he got back on his feet. I immediately said no. My apartment is my sanctuary, and I work long hours to afford it. Having a grown man move in temporarily, who I barely know and who has shown a pattern of irresponsibility, felt like a huge imposition. I offered Emma alternative suggestions, like helping him find a cheap short-term rental or her renting a room somewhere together, but she was very insistent that I let him stay. I explained my reasoning to Emma in a calm and rational way. I said that my home is my space, and while I want to help them, I can't be responsible for supporting someone financially who refuses to take responsibility for themselves. I also mentioned that I'm not comfortable having someone live in my space who I don't really know well and who has shown a tendency to avoid adult responsibilities. Emma got defensive. She said I was being heartless, and that family is supposed to help each other. She accused me of not caring about her relationship or her happiness. A week later, Mark moved in with Emma at her small apartment, which she rents with a roommate. Emma called me crying because she said Mark was being a nightmare, and they were constantly fighting about money and chores. She asked me again if I could let him stay with me, just for a couple of weeks until he found a job. I stuck to my boundaries, and she was furious. She accused me of choosing money over family and said I didn't understand how hard life could be. After this, she started venting about me to our mutual friends, saying I was selfish and cold-hearted. I was hurt because I was trying to help her in ways I felt comfortable with, like giving advice, helping them search for affordable housing, and even giving a small financial contribution to help them get started. I didn't want to enable bad behavior, but apparently my efforts weren't enough in her eyes. Things escalated further when Mark and Emma had a big argument in their apartment about money. Mark apparently said he would move out and go live with me, claiming I owe him for being a family member. Emma called me in a panic, saying that he was threatening to show up at my door, and I firmly told her that under no circumstances would he be allowed to move in. I also told her that if he showed up, I would call the police because I was not letting someone force themselves into my home. Emma didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. When she finally texted, it was to accuse me of destroying their relationship and being the root of all their problems. At this point, I just replied that I love her, I care about her, but I cannot let someone who has shown repeated irresponsibility and entitled behavior live in my home. I also said that if she wants help, I'm happy to assist in ways that do not compromise my own stability. She hasn't responded since. I've told a few friends about this situation, and the responses have been mixed. Some say I'm right to set boundaries and protect my own space and peace of mind. Others say I'm too harsh and that family should step up in times of need, even if it's inconvenient. I keep going back and forth in my mind because I hate feeling like I've abandoned my sister, but I also know I cannot compromise my own well-being to fix someone else's mistakes. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend live in my apartment after he lost his job, even though it caused a huge rift between us. Character count, 6612 if you want. I can also create a second, even longer story in a completely different but equally popular AITA style that hits just under 7,000 characters. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my brother's family live with me after a falling out. I, 32M, have always been close to my younger brother, Jason, 29M, until about a year ago. We grew up in a fairly normal household, not particularly wealthy, but comfortable enough, and our parents always emphasized family loyalty. Jason got married young to his wife, Emma, 28F, and they had 2 kids, ages 3 and 1. I was really happy for him at the time, and our bond seemed unshakable. Fast forward to last year, Jason and Emma got into some financial trouble. They had a series of bad decisions involving loans and credit cards that I didn't know about until he started asking for help. At first, I lent him some money, not a huge sum, maybe a few $1,000s in total over several months, thinking it was temporary. I didn't mind helping because I believed family should help family. But then the situation escalated. Jason and Emma started asking for more money, and then they asked if they could move in with me temporarily while they got back on their feet. I live alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment. I've always enjoyed my space and privacy, and while I care about my brother, I wasn't sure if I could handle having a family of 4 in my small place. I tried to compromise by offering to help them find a rental and co-signing for them, or even helping them pay part of the deposit, but Jason insisted that moving in with me was the only option. I eventually said no. I explained that I wasn't comfortable having them live in my apartment, that my life is structured around my work and personal routines, and that adding a family of 4 would be overwhelming. I offered to help financially in other ways, like covering certain bills temporarily, helping with groceries, or lending money for essentials, but I drew a hard line on having them move in. Jason reacted very badly. He accused me of being selfish, saying that I was abandoning family when they needed me most. He claimed that if I really cared about him and his kids, I'd let them stay with me without complaint. Emma got involved too, sending me long texts about how I was choosing comfort over family and how blood should mean more than convenience. Things got worse when our parents found out. They sided with Jason and Emma, telling me that I should open my home to them and that I was being unreasonable. I tried to explain my perspective, that helping financially doesn't require me to live under the same roof with them, and that having them move in would strain my mental health and career. But they insisted I was being cold and that family obligations outweigh personal comfort. I even tried to compromise further by suggesting a very short-term solution, like them staying for a week or 2 while we explore other options. But Jason and Emma dismissed that. They said it wasn't enough and that it wasn't a serious effort on my part. Eventually, I stopped responding to their texts. I was stressed and felt attacked, so I needed space. My parents called me repeatedly, upset that I was letting my brother and his children suffer. Jason and Emma started posting on social media about their struggles and subtly tagging me, making it seem like I was abandoning them. Friends started asking me about it, and it was embarrassing to explain that I simply didn't want them living with me. About 3 months ago, Jason moved in with another relative, but the damage to our relationship was already done. He hasn't spoken to me since, and when I reached out once to apologize for the tension, without admitting I was wrong about boundaries, he ignored me. My parents are disappointed, and every family gathering is tense because of this situation. I know some people might think I should have just let them move in, but I genuinely believe that doing so would have caused more harm than good. I work long hours, I like my routines, and my apartment isn't set up for a family. I also worry that if I had agreed, it would have set a precedent where they expect me to always host them whenever something goes wrong. I feel that helping financially and offering guidance is sufficient. On the other hand, I do feel guilty. Jason and Emma were in a tough spot, and I didn't want to seem heartless. They were really struggling, and my refusal probably intensified their stress. I've always prided myself on being there for family, and this feels like a failure on my part. So, Reddit, AITA here, I set boundaries to protect my life and mental health, but in doing so, I've alienated my brother, his wife, and even disappointed my parents. Was I wrong to refuse them living with me? Or was I justified in protecting my own space? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé attend my wedding after he humiliated me in front of our family? So, this is a long one, but I'll try to keep it as clear as possible. I, 28F, have been engaged to my partner, Alex, 30M, for about a year, and we recently set a date for our wedding in late spring next year. My younger sister, Jenna, 25F, has been dating her fiancé, Ryan, 27M, for about 2 years, and they recently got engaged as well. Overall, our family is close, but we also have some unresolved issues that occasionally bubble up. A few weeks ago, we had a small family dinner at my parents' house to celebrate my engagement. Everyone was there: parents, siblings, grandparents, aunts and uncles, the usual. Ryan had recently started a new job, and apparently, he's been super stressed. That's relevant, I guess. During dinner, he started making what he probably thought were jokes about my wedding planning. Nothing major at first. He made a sarcastic comment about the number of floral arrangements we were considering. My parents laughed awkwardly. I rolled my eyes and thought, okay, fine, maybe he's just being playful. Then it escalated. He started openly criticizing the seating arrangements, questioning why I wasn't having a buffet instead of plated dinner, and eventually he moved on to a topic that really hurt me. He said, and I quote, "Honestly, I don't know why Alex even agreed to marry you. You're so controlling about every tiny thing. I'd dump him if I were him." I froze. My parents looked shocked. My sister, who had been silently scrolling on her phone, finally looked up, smirked, and didn't say anything. Ryan continued, laughing like it was a joke. I lost it. I told him to leave immediately, but he just shrugged and said, "Relax, I'm just being honest." My parents tried to mediate, saying we should all calm down, but I ended up walking out of the dinner entirely. Alex followed me later, furious but supportive. He called Ryan later that night, warning him that he needed to apologize at the very least. Jenna refused to say anything to Ryan and claimed she didn't see it as a big deal. Here's where things got worse. At my engagement party last month, Ryan was invited by Jenna, not me. He tried to sit near Alex and me, and I told him politely but firmly that I didn't want him at the party. Jenna flipped. She started yelling at me in front of everyone, calling me overdramatic and a control freak for not letting her fiancé attend my party. My parents got involved again, and we ended up having a long, awkward argument where I basically had to explain why I felt humiliated and why it was a reasonable boundary. Since then, Jenna has been messaging me nonstop about the wedding. She's insisting that Ryan has learned his lesson and should absolutely be invited. She says I'm being petty and that it's ridiculous to punish him for a joke. My parents are split. My dad is sympathetic but thinks I should forgive and move on, while my mom is leaning more toward my side. Alex fully supports me, saying that if Ryan can't respect me in my own family and during important moments, he has no business being at our wedding. I did try to approach the situation calmly. I offered a compromise. Ryan could attend the ceremony, but not the reception. I figured this would allow Jenna to have her fiancé at the wedding without forcing me to spend hours near someone who publicly humiliated me. Jenna laughed at that suggestion, said it was humiliating for her, and accused me of trying to control her wedding experience. She's now threatening to boycott our wedding if Ryan isn't invited for the entire day. I've thought about it from every angle. I don't want to cause a family feud, and I definitely don't want to ruin Jenna's happiness, But I also can't imagine having a person who treated me like that at one of the most important days of my life. I've tried talking to her calmly. I've tried compromising, and I've tried explaining why this isn't just about a joke. But she refuses to see it from my perspective. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé attend my wedding because of the way he humiliated me in front of the family? I should probably mention that several cousins and aunts have privately told me they think I'm in the right and that Ryan is out of line. But family politics being what they are, I know it's not that simple. I just want to protect my wedding day and my own dignity, and I feel like if I cave, I'll regret it forever. Has anyone else had to navigate something like this? Am I completely unreasonable, or is my sister overreacting? Hey friends, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We genuinely want to know what you enjoy and what we can improve. What did you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future uploads? Your feedback helps us get better every day. Thanks for sticking with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. So, this is going to be long, but I need to lay out the full story so people can understand where I'm coming from. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who is getting married next month. I have always been close to her, although over the past few years our relationship has had its ups and downs. Growing up, we were tight, but in our late teens and early 20s, things got complicated with arguments over family responsibilities, friends, and some disagreements over life choices. Regardless, I've always supported her in big moments, and I've never really refused to be part of her life events until now. Emily started dating her fiancé, Jake, 27M, about a year and a half ago. From the very beginning, I wasn't fond of him. He's smart and charming on the surface, but I noticed a lot of red flags almost immediately. He can be manipulative, tends to gaslight people, and shows a complete lack of empathy for anyone outside his immediate needs. My parents didn't see these things at first, mostly because he's very good at presenting a polished image. But I noticed how he would subtly undermine Emily, dismiss her feelings, or make jokes at her expense that weren't funny. I didn't say anything to Emily at first because I thought I might be reading too much into it or that she'd tell me if she was unhappy. The issues escalated quickly, though. There were a few incidents that really set me off. The first was during her birthday dinner last year. Jake joked about how Emily was unambitious and that maybe she should have stayed in her old job rather than pursuing her promotion. Emily laughed nervously, but I could see she was hurt. I told Jake privately that his comment was inappropriate, and he laughed it off, calling me overreacting. The second incident was when Emily called me crying after a minor disagreement about wedding plans. Jake had spent hours berating her over the color scheme for the bridesmaids' dresses, saying she was wasting money on nonsense, and that she should just do what he wanted. I ended up consoling her and helping her take a step back from the argument, but it was clear that he was controlling even in small ways. I tried to voice my concerns to Emily multiple times, but she always brushed them off. She'd say things like, "Jake just jokes around like that. You're too sensitive," or "he's just stressed about the wedding." I realized that I couldn't convince her and that if I wanted to maintain any kind of relationship with her, I had to accept that she was choosing him. I tried to compromise by attending family events and remaining polite, but Jake's behavior kept getting worse. The last straw came about 2 weeks ago. I was helping Emily with some last-minute wedding tasks. Jake had been unusually tense that day, and after a minor disagreement about table placements, he snapped at Emily in front of me. He started yelling about how she was stupid and careless and didn't know how to do anything right. Emily was quiet, obviously hurt, and I lost it. I told him that his behavior was unacceptable and that if he spoke to Emily like that again, he needed to leave. He turned his anger on me, calling me overbearing, disrespectful, and someone who thinks she knows better than everyone. My blood boiled, and I left immediately. Emily didn't stop me, but she looked embarrassed and upset. After that incident, I told Emily that I could not, in good conscience, attend the wedding. I love my sister, but I refuse to be around someone who is abusive toward her, especially in such a public and significant moment. I offered to help in other ways, like preparing the speeches, helping with decorations from a distance, or even being there for her privately before or after the ceremony, but I made it clear I would not be physically present while Jake's behavior is a threat to her emotional well-being. Emily exploded at me. She accused me of being dramatic, selfish, and trying to ruin her big day. Our parents are split on the issue. My mom thinks I'm doing the right thing, but my dad thinks I'm overreacting and should put family first. Emily has blocked me on social media and hasn't responded to calls or texts. A few mutual friends have reached out, telling me I should just grin and bear it, and that I'm going to regret missing her wedding. I keep telling myself that attending would send the wrong message and that I can't compromise my boundaries, but part of me feels guilty. I don't want my refusal to create a permanent rift between us, but I also can't ignore Jake's behavior. I'm exhausted by the thought of pretending everything is fine when it's not. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? Or should I just swallow my feelings and go? Even if it means being around someone who I genuinely believe is abusive? AITA for confronting my sister at her wedding and causing a scene over something I thought was important? So, this is going to be long, but I feel like I need to explain everything fully so people can understand my side. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F. We've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child. Always perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect social life, and our parents made it very clear they thought highly of her. I was more quiet and creative, and I didn't always meet their expectations. Over the years, this caused some resentment on both sides, though we try to stay close. Emily got engaged about a year ago and immediately started planning what she called her dream wedding. She has always been very particular and organized, and honestly, I admired her for it. I also have a background in event planning and design, so I offered to help with some of the wedding prep, mostly decorations and seating arrangements. At first, she was really happy about this and asked for my input on a few things. I started designing a few of the floral arrangements and suggested some table layouts that would make things flow better. She agreed with a lot of it at first, and I spent a lot of time making sketches, sourcing flowers, and coordinating with vendors. About 2 months before the wedding, she started getting extremely particular and dismissive. Every suggestion I made, no matter how minor, was shot down. She said she wanted her vision to be perfect and that I didn't understand her style. That hurt, but I tried to step back and respect her wishes. I still helped where I could, mostly following instructions instead of giving ideas. Now here's the part that really escalated things. Emily and her fiancé, Ryan, are very social media oriented. She was obsessed with the idea of having Instagram-worthy wedding photos, and part of that included asking everyone to avoid certain colors or patterns in their clothing. She sent out a long list of do's and don'ts to the guests. Most of it was fine, but she included a very specific rule. No one could wear a particular shade of green because it clashed with her floral theme. I happen to own a green dress that I was planning to wear to her wedding, and it's honestly my favorite dress. I didn't think it would be a big deal, but she messaged me personally saying I couldn't wear it and suggested I pick something else. I was frustrated, but tried to compromise. I asked if maybe I could wear a green dress if it had a different pattern or texture, but she insisted absolutely no green at all. I reminded her that I had helped with decorations and planning for months, and this felt like a personal slight. She responded that she didn't care about that, and the wedding photos had to be perfect. I tried to let it go, but I felt hurt and disrespected, especially since this was her way of rejecting my taste outright after all the time I'd spent helping. On the day of the wedding, I arrived early to help with some final setup. The venue was stunning. Everything looked perfect, and I felt proud of the work I had done. Emily was in a very stressed state, which I expected. During the ceremony, I tried to stay calm, but when she walked down the aisle, my heart sank a little. She looked gorgeous. Everything was perfect, but I felt a surge of anger about the green dress issue. I didn't plan to confront her, but during a quiet moment after the ceremony, while everyone was milling around for photos, I walked up to her and quietly said something like, "I still don't get why I can't wear my dress. I helped make this day happen too, and it feels unfair that you're treating me like a stranger." Emily froze, and then her face flushed. She whispered that this wasn't the time or place, and I should drop it. But I was emotional and tired of suppressing my feelings. I raised my voice slightly and said, It's just a dress, but it's really about respect. I feel like you've spent the last few months ignoring my contributions and my choices, and it hurts. At this point, a few guests started to notice, and I could see my parents looking uncomfortable. Emily snapped. She shouted that I was trying to ruin her day and that I had no right to make this about me. Ryan tried to intervene, saying we could talk later, but I interrupted him and said I didn't want to wait. This turned into a full argument in the middle of the venue. I admitted I had wanted to wear my green dress and that I was upset by what felt like ongoing dismissal from her. Emily accused me of being selfish and manipulative, and she said I had embarrassed her in front of everyone. Some guests tried to pull us apart. My mom looked furious, and my dad just sighed. Eventually, security and a few family members stepped in and separated us. I didn't go to the reception. I left early because I was too upset to stay. Since the wedding, family members have been divided. Some think I overreacted, ruined her special day, and should have kept my feelings private. Others say Emily was unreasonable and controlling, and I had a right to express myself after months of being dismissed. Emily refuses to speak to me right now and has blocked me on social media. My parents are disappointed with both of us. I keep thinking about whether I handled it wrong. I didn't want to ruin her wedding, but I felt disrespected and hurt. Was I the asshole for confronting her publicly, or should I have just let it go completely even though it felt unfair? AITA? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she completely disregarded my boundaries? I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emma, 29F. Growing up, we were inseparable and we shared a lot of milestones together. Our relationship has had its ups and downs, but I've always been someone she could count on. I live in a decent-sized house that I bought about 5 years ago, and I've always been proud of the fact that I can host family gatherings comfortably. I love having people over, and I've hosted birthday parties, holiday dinners, and even small wedding showers without much issue. A little over a year ago, Emma got engaged to her fiancé, Jason, 30M. I was thrilled for them, and we immediately started discussing wedding plans. Emma has always been a bit impulsive, while I tend to be more detail-oriented and organized. I offered early on to help wherever I could, and she seemed grateful. Things were going smoothly for the first few months, and then she mentioned wanting to have her wedding at my house. At first, I thought she was joking. My house is nice, but it's not a wedding venue. I expressed concerns about space, parking, and the fact that I have a garden that would need major prep work. I also mentioned that I'm a private person, and hosting over 50 people in my home for a formal event was going to be stressful. Emma brushed all of it off, saying she just envisioned the wedding there, and that I was being dramatic. Over the next few months, she became increasingly insistent. She told me she wanted the ceremony in my backyard and the reception inside. She even sent me Pinterest boards, color schemes, and layouts, all assuming I would automatically say yes. I kept telling her I needed to think about it, and that it was a big ask. Each time I tried to discuss alternatives, like renting a small venue nearby, she would get upset and say, "I really thought you'd want to be part of my big day in this way." I started to feel like my boundaries were being completely ignored. Things came to a head about 6 months before the wedding. Emma had decided that she wanted a marquee tent in the backyard, catering, a full DJ setup, and a bar. She sent me a list of things I need to do as the host, which included not only letting the wedding party use my house for prep, but also arranging furniture, coordinating deliveries, and helping with cleanup. When I tried to explain that this was way beyond what I was comfortable with, she accused me of being selfish and said, "I can't believe you'd make me have the wedding somewhere else just because you're scared of a little hard work." I finally told her that I could not host her wedding. I explained that I love her and I want to be part of her wedding in other ways, but hosting the event in my home was not something I could do. She cried, yelled, and guilt-tripped me for hours over the phone. She told me that I was ruining her dream wedding and that I was choosing furniture over family. I stayed firm, but it broke my heart that our relationship was becoming so strained. After that, she tried to find compromises like limiting the guest list or only having the ceremony in my backyard, but she kept coming back to the idea of my house being the central location. I remained firm and suggested professional venues, which she reluctantly agreed to start looking into. However, She has since made multiple passive-aggressive comments, like posting pictures of my living room with captions like, "Imagine having a wedding here, if only someone was brave enough." Our parents have taken her side. They keep texting me, asking why I'm being so difficult, and insisting that this would be a family effort. I try to explain that it's not about being difficult, but about boundaries and respecting my home. They argue that families should make sacrifices for each other and that I'm overreacting. I've also received messages from some extended relatives saying things like, "It's just one day, you should help," which makes me feel even more isolated. I've offered to help in other ways, helping pick the florist, assisting with the playlist, coordinating vendors, and even helping with decorations at the venue she eventually chooses. I've tried to make it clear that I want to be involved, just not in a way that compromises my personal space or mental health. Emma still seems angry and distant, and our conversations have become tense. I feel guilty sometimes because I know this is a huge day for her, and I love her, but I also feel like my home is my sanctuary. I can't imagine hosting a wedding that would require me to manage logistics for dozens of strangers while sacrificing my own space, privacy, and mental health. I've considered that maybe I'm overreacting, but every time I think about it, I get stressed just imagining the scenario. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding. I want to support her and be part of her big day, but I also need to protect my own boundaries and well-being. The situation has created a rift that I'm struggling to navigate. My sister's engagement was supposed to bring joy, but now every conversation feels like a negotiation over my house and sanity. I feel torn because I love my sister and want her to have a beautiful wedding, but I also feel like my feelings and boundaries aren't being respected. AITA for telling my sister-in-law she couldn't bring her kids to my wedding after she tried to guilt-trip me. This is going to be long, but I need some outside perspective because my family is losing their minds over this. I, 32F, am getting married to my fiancé, David, 34M, in a few months, and things have gotten unexpectedly complicated because of my sister-in-law, whom I'll call Laura, 35F. David and I have been together for 6 years, and from the start, we agreed that we wanted a small, adult-focused wedding. We're paying for it ourselves, and our venue is limited to 80 people. We've made it very clear that this is an adults-only event. I have nieces and nephews, but we decided from the beginning that children would not be part of the celebration, not out of dislike, but because we want to focus on the ceremony, speeches, dancing, and general adult conversation. Laura has 3 kids, ages 4, 7, and 10. She is a wonderful mom, but she is also very insistent that her kids are included in every family gathering, and she tends to use guilt as a tool when things don't go her way. I wasn't anticipating that this would become a huge issue until we sent out the invitations. When she received hers, she immediately called David and me separately. The first call was David. She sounded upset and said, "I just saw the invitation, and there's no mention of the kids. Are they not invited?" David explained gently that we had made the wedding adults only due to space constraints and the type of event we wanted. She said, "I just don't understand why my children can't be there. It's my wedding too, technically. I mean, we're all family. I feel like you're excluding them." David tried to reassure her that she and her husband were very much invited and that we would have plenty of space to make sure everyone was comfortable. But she started crying on the phone, saying she felt hurt and that she didn't see how any wedding could be truly enjoyable without her kids. I tried to handle it myself when she called me the next day. She repeated the same points, and then she said something that really upset me. "I guess if you want an adults-only wedding, I just won't come. I can't bring myself to be at a celebration that doesn't include my children. You're basically saying my kids aren't important." At this point, I had to draw the line. I stayed calm, even though inside I was fuming. I told her, "Laura, I understand that you want your children there, and I love them too, but David and I have made a very deliberate choice about the kind of wedding we want. We are not inviting children. This is not personal. It's not about your kids not being important. It's about the type of celebration we want to have. You're welcome to attend, but the kids cannot come. I understand if that means you decide not to attend, but that's your choice." She hung up on me. The fallout was immediate. The next day, I got texts from my mother, my aunt, and even a few cousins all telling me I was being unfair and too rigid about the whole thing. My mom sent me a long voice note saying, "You have to understand how hurtful this is. Laura has 3 kids. Do you really want to hurt your sister-in-law on your wedding day?" I explained to them all that this wasn't a matter of being cruel. It was about logistics and the type of wedding we wanted. I also reminded them that we are still inviting every adult family member. But they all insisted I was being unreasonable and that I should make an exception just this once. Meanwhile, Laura started posting subtle things on social media, like photos of family events she had attended and captions like "Family Matters Most" and tagging me, which I can only assume is her way of publicly shaming me. David is furious because he thinks this is unnecessary drama, but he also understands that I'm within my rights to set the rules for our wedding. I tried to see if there was a compromise. I suggested she could hire a babysitter for the kids to come for the reception portion only, or that we could arrange a small play area nearby so she could check on them during the ceremony. But she rejected everything, saying that would make her look bad in front of her children and that kids deserve to be at family events. At this point, I'm stuck. I feel like we have been completely reasonable. We're not excluding children in general, just for this one event. We've been consistent with our invitations. We are paying for everything ourselves, and we simply don't have the capacity or the type of event to host kids. I even reached out to other family members who are parents, and they all understood and agreed with our decision. Yet, my mother and other relatives are pressuring me to fix things with Laura or risk upsetting her permanently. David and I have decided we will not change our policy. Our worry is that if we give in for one family member, it will open the door for endless negotiations about children for every wedding, party, or gathering in the future. So, Reddit, AITA for telling my sister-in-law she could not bring her children to my wedding, even after she tried to guilt-trip me and is now turning my family against me. I want my wedding to be about me and David, not about a debate over kids, but I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm the bad guy here, because everyone keeps telling me I'm being heartless. AITA for refusing to compromise on my wedding guest list, even though it upset my family. So, here's the situation. I, 28F, am getting married in about 6 months. My fiancé, Evan, 30M, and I have been together for 6 years, and we've been discussing our wedding for a while now. I always envisioned a small, intimate ceremony with our closest friends and family. Evan, on the other hand, has a much larger extended family and a tendency to want to invite everyone we've ever met. We've had some back and forths about the guest list, but we thought we had reached a compromise until recently. Originally, I wanted around 60 to 70 guests. Evan's side wanted 150 plus. After a lot of discussions, we agreed on about 100 guests. This included both sides' immediate family, a handful of close friends, and some cousins we see regularly. I drew up the list meticulously, making sure to include the people I truly care about, while trying not to overcomplicate things. I thought it was a fair middle ground. The problem started when my parents, particularly my mother, got involved. She has always been very traditional and believes weddings are a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have all extended family present. When she saw our guest list, she immediately started complaining. She claimed that I was being selfish for not inviting every distant cousin, my dad's coworkers, and friends from high school I haven't spoken to in over a decade. She also said that Evan's family was rude for wanting to limit the guest list. I tried to explain to her that this was our wedding, and we wanted it to reflect us, not some massive social event. I told her we weren't trying to exclude anyone maliciously. We just didn't want a 200-person wedding where we barely got to talk to anyone. She went ballistic. According to her, weddings are about honoring your family and showing respect to everyone who has been part of your life. I argued that honoring our family doesn't mean inviting everyone we've ever met, especially people who we haven't spoken to in years, but she didn't budge. Things escalated when she demanded that we invite a few distant cousins from out of state, as well as a former neighbor I hadn't seen in 15 years. I told her I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I explained that our venue has a strict limit, and adding more people would force us to cut someone from Evan's side, which felt unfair. She accused me of manipulating the wedding to favor Evan's family, and said I was being controlling. Evan tried to mediate by suggesting we extend the guest list by 10 people, but I refused. I explained that even 10 more people could create a slippery slope, as my mom would likely continue to push for more. Evan and I agreed that compromising this far wasn't worth the stress. My parents, however, were furious. My mom cried to my aunt and uncle, who then called me, trying to guilt-trip me into doing the right thing for the family. They said I would regret not having everyone there, and that weddings are for the family, not just the couple. Then my mother sent me a long, dramatic email outlining every person she thought we should invite. It included people I barely remember, people who had hurt me in the past, and people I genuinely do not want at my wedding. The email was over 2,000 words and ended with, "I hope you don't let your pride ruin your special day. This is your chance to make amends with the family and show respect." I didn't respond because I was too upset. 2 weeks later, she confronted me in person and started crying in front of Evan. She said I was destroying the family bond and that I was choosing Evan over my own blood. I calmly told her that I loved her and respected her, but this was my wedding and Evan and I had the right to decide who we wanted there. I also reminded her that I was not excluding her or anyone from her immediate family, only distant relatives who were not part of our daily lives. She then pulled what I consider the final straw. She threatened not to attend the wedding if her extended suggestions weren't included. My dad backed her up, saying that my decision was selfish and hurtful to the family. Evan was extremely frustrated because he wanted to avoid this drama, and I could feel him starting to side with my parents to keep the peace. But I refused. I told him I could not, in good conscience, invite people we didn't want there just to satisfy my mom. Now, the tension is unbearable. My parents have stopped talking to me except for passive-aggressive texts and comments, and my fiancé is worried that this will create lasting rifts in the family. I feel guilty because I don't want to ruin my wedding with family drama, but I also feel that I have a right to protect my boundaries. I want a wedding that feels authentic and meaningful to me and Evan, not one dictated by guilt and obligation. Friends and coworkers have been divided when I've shared this. Some say I'm absolutely right and that it's my and Evan's day. Others say I'm being ungrateful and that family relationships are more important than personal preferences. Evan is backing me 100%, but my parents are furious and threatening to boycott, and I don't know if I'm the asterisk hole here. AITA for refusing to invite extended family members my parents want at my wedding, even though it has caused significant tension and threats from them. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my house after he caused a huge scene at my wedding. This all started about 6 months ago when my sister, Emma, announced she was bringing her boyfriend, Mark, to my wedding. I had met Mark a few times before, and while he seemed a little intense, I didn't think much of it at the time. I should note that my wedding was always going to be small and intimate, just close family and friends, so I was already nervous about having extra people around. I politely mentioned to Emma that the guest list was tight, but she insisted he had to come, claiming he had never met any of my family. I reluctantly agreed, thinking it would be a one-time thing and that everyone could be civil. The wedding day came, and from the start, Mark was difficult. During the ceremony, he loudly whispered criticisms about the seating arrangements and the officiant's timing. At the reception, he openly complained about the food, saying it was amateurish and not worth the price. Some guests tried to brush it off, but it created a noticeable tension. Things escalated when I gave a toast. Mark interrupted me mid-sentence, loudly telling me that I should have handled the decorations differently because neutral tones make the space look smaller, and that's just bad design sense. My fiancé and I were mortified. I ended up cutting the toast short and excusing myself to the bathroom to collect myself because I was so embarrassed. After that, the rest of the night was a blur of complaints and snide remarks from Mark. He criticized my DJ for playing obvious crowd pleasers instead of more sophisticated music, mocked my uncle for wearing a suit that was slightly wrinkled, and even suggested that the wedding favors I'd spent months preparing were tacky. The final straw came when he tried to grab the mic from the DJ to make an unscheduled speech criticizing our choice of honeymoon destination, claiming it was predictable and uninspired. My family was stunned, and my new spouse was furious. I asked Emma to control him, but she just shrugged and said, "He's passionate. That's just who he is." After the wedding, Emma called me upset because she thought I had overreacted to Mark's behavior. I tried to explain that the comments and disruptions weren't just annoying. They were humiliating in front of people I loved. She insisted I was being too harsh and accused me of being ungrateful for welcoming him into the family. Fast forward to now, Mark has been asking if he can stay at my house for a weekend because he was in town for work and didn't want to spend money on a hotel. I immediately said no. I explained to Emma that after the wedding fiasco, I have zero interest in hosting him. I even told her honestly that I don't feel comfortable having someone who publicly embarrassed me in my own home. Emma lost it. She said I was being dramatic and selfish and accused me of holding a grudge. She claimed that Mark doesn't remember anything that happened at the wedding and that I was overreacting. She started pressuring me, saying that if I truly cared about our family, I would let him stay. I stuck to my decision, and now Emma is barely talking to me. She's been posting cryptic things on social media about how families should support each other no matter what, and how some people just can't forgive minor mistakes. A few mutual friends have reached out, saying I should reconsider because it's just a weekend, and that I'm being too rigid and hard to get along with. My spouse fully supports my decision, pointing out that Mark's past behavior shows no sign of him being respectful in my home, and I agree with them. Here's where I feel stuck. I genuinely feel justified in saying no. My home is a place I should feel safe and comfortable, especially from someone who has repeatedly embarrassed me and ignored boundaries. At the same time, I understand that Emma feels like I'm being harsh towards someone she cares about. I'm also worried about family dynamics and whether this refusal will cause a permanent rift. I'm torn because I don't want to seem petty or grudging, but I also don't want to let someone into my personal space who has already shown blatant disrespect. I've offered alternatives like nearby hotels or Airbnb rentals and even suggested meeting them at a restaurant, but Emma keeps pushing. I can't help but feel that if I give in, it will set a precedent for further disrespectful behavior. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my house, given everything that happened at my wedding. AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding when he tried to force me into it. I, 28F, have a complicated relationship with my older brother, Jake, 34M. Our parents were never exactly supportive or financially stable, so we've both had to fend for ourselves in different ways. I've always been the responsible one with money, while Jake has, let's say, a more live-for-the-moment approach. Over the years, it's led to a lot of tension, especially because he's not shy about asking for financial help and then acting like I owe him because I'm the successful one in the family. Recently, Jake got engaged to his girlfriend, Emily, 30F, who is lovely in person but has a certain flair for drama and expecting other people to do everything for her. Right after the engagement, Jake casually dropped that they were planning a destination wedding in Mexico, around 150 guests, at a resort that was basically the size of a small castle. The kicker? He expected me to pay for a chunk of it. Not because they needed help, necessarily. They had some savings, but because it's tradition for siblings to help out with weddings, and you make way more than me. I laughed at first because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Jake sat me down and went through a spreadsheet he had made, showing estimated costs, flights, resort stay, food, drinks, entertainment, the works. According to his calculations, he expected me to contribute about $5,000. I reminded him that while I make a decent living, I'm not rolling in cash, and I have my own bills, student loans, and rent to consider. He rolled his eyes and said, "You don't have a mortgage. You don't have kids. You literally have nothing holding you back. $5,000 is nothing. You be helping your family." I refused. I told him I would attend the wedding if I could afford it, but I was not writing a blank check just because he won a luxury wedding. Jake got visibly angry and started guilt-tripping me, saying things like, "I can't believe you'd let Emily down like this. She's your sister-in-law, and you're literally choosing money over family." He even went so far as to say that our parents would be disappointed in me. I pointed out that our parents are adults, and if they were disappointed in me, that's their problem, not mine. It escalated quickly. Jake texted me multiple times a day about it, using every manipulation tactic he could think of: guilt trips, reminders of all the things I supposedly owe him, and even trying to turn my boyfriend into a witness, like, you wouldn't want your boyfriend to see you being selfish, right? At that point, I stopped replying to texts and told him I would not discuss money with him anymore. 2 weeks later, Emily called me. She was upset and confused because Jake apparently told her I had refused to support the wedding financially. She tried to reason with me, asking if I could at least cover part of the hotel stay or a meal for the rehearsal dinner. I told her politely that I couldn't, but I would still come to the wedding if I could afford the trip and wanted to celebrate with them. She got defensive and said, "But Jake said you're being deliberately cruel. Do you hate us that much?" I was shocked. At this point, I was just trying to protect my own finances. I never said I hated anyone. Things got worse when Jake's fiancée started posting on social media about how families should always help each other, no excuses, and tag me in it. It felt like a public shaming campaign. Friends and distant relatives started asking me why I wasn't contributing. Some even implied that I was cheap or selfish. I tried to explain calmly that I'm not funding their wedding, but it fell on deaf ears. The final straw came last weekend. Jake called me, furious, claiming I was ruining their wedding and forcing them to downgrade because of my selfishness. I lost it. I told him exactly what I thought, that it is not my responsibility to bankroll a lavish destination wedding for anyone, that he is an adult and should budget within his means, and that the constant guilt-tripping and attempts to manipulate me into paying were unacceptable. He hung up and hasn't spoken to me since. Our parents are now trying to mediate, saying things like, "You should just give them something, even a small amount," but I honestly feel like any contribution is setting a precedent where Jake can guilt me into paying for things indefinitely. I've never refused to help family when I could, but this feels different. This is not an emergency or an unavoidable expense. It's a luxury that he wants, and he's trying to make me responsible for it. I feel bad because I know this is straining family relationships, and I do want to celebrate Jake and Emily's wedding with them. But I also feel like I have the right to say no, especially when the request feels entitled and manipulative. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding when he tried to force me into it? AITA for refusing to let my sister move back into my house after she got out of rehab? So a bit of context. I, 32F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. My sister, Maddie, 28F, has struggled with substance abuse for most of her adult life. She's been in and out of rehab several times, and honestly, each time it's been a huge emotional drain on everyone around her. I love her dearly, but she has a pattern of self-destructive behavior that has put a massive strain on our family relationships. About 2 months ago, Maddie completed her latest stint in rehab. She called me and asked if she could stay at my apartment while she got back on her feet. She claimed that she had a job lined up and a plan for long-term recovery, but she had nowhere else to go. My initial instinct was to help because I do care about her, but I also know how chaotic things can get if I let her live with me. I told her that while I wanted to support her recovery, I couldn't have her move in. I explained that my apartment is small, I work long hours, and I have a dog that doesn't handle strangers well. I also mentioned that having her live with me in the past had been incredibly stressful. She often drank or used before rehab, got violent with arguments, and once even lost my car keys. I offered to help her find a sober living facility, help with transportation to meetings, and even financially assist with deposits, but I could not have her in my home. Maddie completely lost it. She started texting me nonstop, calling me selfish, and saying that I was abandoning her at her most vulnerable moment. She even threatened to tell my parents that I refused to help her out. Our parents, who are usually very hands-off, got involved after she called them crying. They told me that I should just let her stay with me temporarily because she needed family support. I tried to explain my boundaries, but they accused me of being cold and judgmental. A week after the initial conversation, Maddie showed up at my apartment unannounced. I wasn't home, but she left a note saying she would wait outside until I got back so we could talk. When I returned, she was sitting on my front steps with a suitcase and a backpack. I asked her to leave, reminding her that I had already said no. She refused, insisting that she couldn't go back to her parents' house and didn't want to stay in a shelter. I ended up calling my parents to come and talk her down because I didn't want an altercation outside my apartment. After that incident, Maddie started posting on social media about how I abandoned her and how she had nowhere else to turn. A few of our mutual friends started messaging me, telling me that I should be there for family and that I was being cruel. It's gotten to the point where I feel like every aspect of my life is being judged because I won't let my sister live with me. I've continued helping her from a distance. I've driven her to therapy, helped her find temporary housing, and even sent her money for groceries. But she keeps saying that nothing is enough unless she can move in. My parents have stopped speaking to me regularly, and my friends seem uncomfortable around me because of all the drama. Maddie keeps threatening to show up at my apartment or at my work if I don't change my mind. I feel like I'm being responsible by setting boundaries, but I also feel guilty. I don't want to hurt my sister, but I also can't let her move in and risk undoing my own mental health and stability. I can't even have a conversation with my parents or friends about it without being told that I'm selfish and uncaring. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in my house after rehab. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss new uploads. And feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean the world to me. See you in the next video.